right. So we have Patitam Pareo Vira Kripaya Dina Vatsala Sharanyo Navadich Chokya Saranyo Navadich Chlokya Ahachedam Hasaniva Patitam Pareo Vira Kripaya Dina Vatsala Sharanyo Navadich Chlokya Ahachedam Hasan Iva. So this verse translates as Maharaj Parīkṣit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered and fallen Kālī, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. So here's Prabhupada's purport. Even an ordinary kshatriya does not kill a surrendered person, and what to speak of Maharaj Parīkṣit, who was by nature compassionate and kind to the poor. He was smiling because the artificially dressed Kālī had disclosed his identity as a lower class man. And he was thinking how ironic it was that although no one was saved from his sharp sword when he desired to kill, the poor lower class Kālī was spared by his timely surrender. Maharaj Parīkṣit's glory and kindness are therefore sung in history. He was a kind and compassionate emperor, fully worthy of accepting surrender even from his enemy. Thus, the personality of Kālī was saved by the will of providence. All right. So now I'll take it over from here. I also have my own version of the Veda base here. Patitam Pareyor Vira Kripaya Dina Vatsalaha Sharanyo Navidich Shlokya Ahachedam Hasan Iva. The Maharaj Parīkṣit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered and fallen Kālī, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. So this verse that we're discussing today is kind of in the flow of this much longer story about Maharaj Parīkṣit, and how he was surveying his kingdom, and in the process of surveying his kingdom, he discovered that there was a man brutalizing a bull, and so Maharaj Parīkṣit couldn't let this go unchecked. So he decided then to take the matter into his own hands. So as I understand it, is this the right thing? You're in Ghana, Central West Africa, or that's from the other? I copied this over from the previous verse that I had done with you all some time before, but maybe it's a different group. Is this the same or not?
It's the same, all right.
Okay, good. But I switched the day and the verse because today is the 5th of October, and it's 2022. So this story is about the timely surrender of Kālī. So I just wanted to make one point clear right away, is there's a difference between Kālī and Kālī. So Kālī, with the short vowels, is the Yuga. So it's Kaliyuga. But there is the terrifying form of Durga Devi, who is called Kālī, with the long A and the long I. And Kālī is the dreadful form of Durga Devi that people do sacrifices to. And sometimes she whacks off their heads, things like that. She is kind of understood by the Vedas to be the ghastly form of material nature. So there's Kālī and Kālī. And today we're talking about Kālī, not Kālī. So just to get that straight. And so this story is, has been sort of developing in this particular narrative here. And as a result, we begin to see the different parts of the story that Kālī confronted by Maharaj Parīkṣit in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is just getting started. We know that during the time Krishna was on the planet, it was impossible for Kālī to make any inroads or to get anything accomplished in the material world. So it couldn't happen. And then after Krishna left, the Pandavas were there. And so still Kālī, although it was time for Kālī, Kālī couldn't make any progress. And then now that the Pandavas were gone, their only remaining descendant, Parīkṣit, was still around. But, he was powerful enough that he also was able to check Kālī. Now, after Maharaj Parīkṣit, that's when Kālī officially comes in. And of course, this is the story, the line where we find out how and when Kālī comes in. We find out that Kālī comes in as a result of Parīkṣit actually accepting Kālī's surrender and giving Kālī a place in his kingdom. You might wonder, well, why did Kālī get a place in Maharaj Parīkṣit's kingdom? Why would Parīkṣit allow such a thing as Kālī in his kingdom anywhere? And the answer is, of course, that the reason that Maharaj Parīkṣit did was because it was time for Kālī. It was the nature of the order of things in the universe that after Satya Yuga, there's Treta Yuga, where religion declines. And after Treta Yuga, there's Dvapara Yuga, where religion declines even more. And after Dvapara Yuga, there's Kaliyuga, where religion declines even more. So it's impossible to make a heaven on earth or a spiritual world here. But it's not necessary to try to make a heaven on earth here. What is necessary is to learn how to get out of here, how to leave this material world behind and go to the spiritual world. So this is what Parīkṣit was seeing, that Kaliyuga was going to come in now and gradually pollute the atmosphere of the world that we live in. And we ourselves see far more advancement of Kālī than Maharaj Parīkṣit ever did. So at our point in time, which is, some 5,000 years after Maharaj Parīkṣit, we see that Kaliyuga has gone quite far. And so we have this artwork here where we have the ship of ISKCON or the ship of Vaishnava devotees, and they are sailing over the dark seas of Kaliyuga. And in Kaliyuga, there's, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, intoxication, so many sinful things going on. And as long as we stay on the ship and as long as we chant Hare Krishna and we're attentive to spiritual life and we don't make offenses, we will be saved from the dark waters of Kaliyuga, and we won't be, co-opted by the horrible climate of Kālī. In the age of Kālī, we know that everything is perverted, that religion becomes a joke, governments become actually like thieves or hoodlums. We find that marriages become almost of no real significance. People bump in and bump out of marriages very, very quickly without making any kind of real effort. We find that everything disintegrates and degenerates here in the age of Kaliyuga. So that's why Kaliyuga is such a bad period of time. And Parīkṣit could see it coming, and he stopped it right then and there. But as we see, as he was preparing to kill Kālī, Kālī took shelter of Maharaj Parīkṣit. And because Kālī took shelter of Maharaj Parīkṣit, then Parīkṣit couldn't kill Kālī. As a result, he had to spare Kālī because Kālī surrendered unto him. So then, because Kālī surrendered, Kālī asked Maharaj Parīkṣit, please give me some place where I can reside. And so reluctantly, Parīkṣit gave Kālī places to reside. And he said, wherever there is wherever there is intoxication, wherever there is gambling, wherever there is meat eating, wherever there is illicit sex, you can stay there. But Kālī said, but there aren't any places like that in your kingdom. And so Parīkṣit said, well, wherever gold is hoarded. So these are the 5 strongholds of how things become degraded. So if we find some place where people are hoarding gold, then it will become a magnet for illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating. And we see these kind of things. Africa is known for having a gold coast and, having all these very opulent minerals there. So at one time, it must have been a very pious place to have all these, wonderful features in the earth. And it was that way also in many other countries, that there was so many minerals and precious, diamonds and gold and things like that. And those things only exist in the ground if the inhabitants of those places, at least at some time, were very pious. They might not be now, but at one time they must have been. So at any rate, Kālī begins to degrade things right away. Parīkṣit knows it, but he can't kill Kālī, so he has to accommodate Kālī. And of course, after Parīkṣit, then Kālī will start to make more and more progress until we get to the situation that we see today, where everything is very degraded. And again, we might have this question of why would Parīkṣit allow Kālī there at all? And the answer, of course, is that in our material world, there must be both good and evil. If we want to be done with evil, we have to go to the spiritual world. There we won't experience evil. It doesn't exist there. But this is the place where there is evil. In other words, people are allowed, and it's a possibility to ignore the Supreme and act in antagonism to the Supreme. Here it's possible to do that in this world, in this material world. And because it is possible, then people can flout or reject the Supreme Lord. Now, as we're saying here, without free will, there cannot be love. So if we were not able to reject Krishna, it would mean nothing to accept Krishna. Because we can reject Krishna, accepting Krishna means something. Otherwise, we would just be robots. I sometimes use the example that, if you put a computer in front of you and you program it so it says, I love you, and it can write, I love you across the screen thousands and thousands of times. And even though the computer is writing across the screen, I love you, somehow we doubt that the computer actually loves us, because it's just doing what we tell it to do. Whatever we tell it to do, it will do. We could just as easily program it to say, I hate you, or I don't have any feelings for you at all. I'm a computer, we can tell the computer to say anything. And so if humans were like that, if we were just divine robots, then love would have no meaning. But for love to have meaning, there has to be a possibility for not love or rejecting love. And to reject love, that has to be possible. For that to be possible, there has to be a place where you can do it. And that place is the material world. That place is not the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, we cannot reject God, because if we want to, we will just come here to the material world where you can reject God. And most of the people in the material world have come here because they have rejected God. And that's why we're here. In the material world, it's possible to reject God. People do it, and it's allowable here. In fact, it's what most people are doing here in the material world. They're rejecting God. So if we remove Kālī, if Parīkṣit had stopped Kālī, then there would be no opportunity for those people who want to reject God to reject God. Now, we, of course, as devotees, we want to encourage people to accept God. We can't force people to accept God, but we can encourage them to. And but we cannot force the situation. Nobody can force someone to love God. That has to happen as a result of free will, a voluntary wanting to please the Supreme Lord. So, of course, here we have the Vishnu Dutas and the Yama Dutas. They're fighting for the soul of Ajamil, the sinful Ajamil. And so in this way, we are surrounded by inclinations toward the wrong and inclinations towards the right. And in Kaliyuga, we have far more of an inclination toward the wrong. That's why we're Kaliyuga babies. You know, we were all here at this time because, you know, we wanted to really reject God. But somehow or another, we met devotees, and our plan to reject God got rejected itself. So we decided to try to please God instead of rejecting him. So this is why we have good and evil. So for good and evil, for love to exist, there has to be free will. For free will to exist, there has to be the ability to reject love or to reject God. And when one rejects God, that's what we commonly call evil. And so Kaliyuga is a time where all these bad qualities of individuals become piled up. And we have all kinds of things, as it's mentioned in the 15th chapter of this same verse. We find that Maharaj Yudhisthira this was before Parīkṣit's birth, and Maharaj Yudhisthira is ending his life, and the Pandavas are leaving to go to the Himalayas. Maharaj Yudhisthira was intelligent enough to understand that the influence of the age of Kālī gradually expanding avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence all over the capital, state, home, and individual person, and wisely he prepared himself for starting from home, and he dressed himself likewise. So Maharaj Yudhisthira could understand Kaliyuga was due, and so he gave up his connection with the kingdom. He installed Parīkṣit on the throne, and he walked into the Himalayas. And as we know, the Pandavas all followed him, along with Draupadi, and of course one dog. So in Kaliyuga, we have these qualities. These are the hallmarks of Kaliyuga: avarice, falsehood, diplomacy, cheating, nepotism, violence, as Prabhupada puts it in the purport of 1.15.37. These are the qualities of Kaliyuga. And that's why everywhere we see trashed landscape, we see the ecology withering away, we see people doing horrible things, we see wars, we see famine, we see floods, we see droughts, we see natural disasters of every kind. And so this is the nature of Kaliyuga, because people are rejecting God. If you reject God, then material nature cannot be harmonious with you. The individual, by rejecting God, is creating bad karma for himself. And because he's creating bad karma, that means that that bad karma has to return to him in the form of punishment. And that punishment arrives because of the demigods. Starting with Yamaraj, the demigods take a inventory of an individual's good and bad deeds, his papa and his punya, his good deeds and his bad deeds. And so therefore, if someone's doing bad deeds, he's doing papa. then he has to get what we call vikarma, which is bad karmic reactions. If someone's doing good deeds, that's called karma, or actually punya. So if someone's doing good deeds, he's doing punya, and that means he gets good karma back. And of course, if someone's serving the Supreme Lord as a devotee, he gets no karma, which is called akarma. So the demigods, they evaluate each individual from moment to moment, what they're doing, what they have done, and they arrange for the material nature to set up situations where our good deeds are rewarded and our bad deeds are punished. And that's what karma is all about. And so in Kālī, most people are being punished because everybody's sinful. And because everybody's sinful, nature is not harmonious and is not plentiful. Nature is not nurturing. Nature is not pleasant to the senses. We find oftentimes nature is denuded. Nature is aggravated. Nature is violent. Nature is terrifying. Nature is bleak. Nature is exhausting. Nature is destructive of our bodies and our senses. So this is all because the humans themselves are acting sinfully, and individually they're getting their bad karma. And through the demigods, the agents of the material world, they are getting all kinds of karma in the form of several different things, which I'm going to talk about now. That we actually see that there are three causes of suffering, and they are adhyatmic, adhibautic, and adhidaivik. These are mentioned in various places, but we see that in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 327, that we find out that one enjoys according to good things that they've done, and one suffers according to bad things one has done. So this is the nature of our material world, that material life is arranged so that our deeds are overseen by the modes of nature and reciprocated. So I'll put that on the screen here. So this is 327, and that verse is Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvajaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. So the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of nature. So we think we're doing things, but actually the modes of nature are active. And the reciprocation that we get from the modes of nature is due to our past karma or bad karma. So if we do good karma, we oftentimes get what we're hoping for. We're able to decide something, and as a result of deciding it, we actually have what we want happen. But if we have a lot of bad karma, then try as we might, we may try to do things to experience a good result, but because of our bad karma, all of our efforts at trying to enjoy the material world all fail, and as a result, we suffer instead of enjoying. So as we're saying here, there's three kinds of causes of suffering. Adhyatmic, those are sufferings that are due to our own action, our own stupidity, our own mistakes and miscalculations we suffer. And sometimes we worry, and this also causes suffering for us. And there's adhibautic miseries, which are caused by other people or other entities. So people cause us misery because they attack us, they are competing with us, they cause us various humiliations or sufferings. And so in this way, we suffer as a result of what other entities do, or even dog bites or mosquito bites and all those kind of things. Those are also adibotic miseries, and miseries that are caused by other beings. And finally, adidivic miseries are miseries that are caused by the demigods directly, like landslides, hurricanes, droughts, famines, etc., great diseases. All these things are indications of the suffering caused by the demigods, which is called adidivic suffering. So Kālī, as we've been talking about, is a very bad time to live. Because it's a bad time, people are mostly sinful, and as a result of being sinful, mostly they're suffering, and they're suffering in these three ways. They're suffering because of the stupid things they do to themselves. They're suffering because they have they're making each other suffer, and finally because the demigods are causing them to suffer. And so that brings me to my last slide here. And this karma carries on from lifetime to lifetime. We may have one kind of body today, but when we die, we may have a different kind of body in our next life. And that's due to our karma. So Parīkṣit, he gave shelter to Kālī, and having given shelter to Kālī, now Kālī was able to come in and fully do whatever Kālī wanted to do. There was no holding back. That now Kālī has the green light. It's Kālī's time, and whatever Kālī does will be successful, and whatever other people do will eventually fail. So that's the age that we're living in. I'll open now for questions or comments. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll try to answer.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, for getting us into the nectar of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, some of us are fortunate. We are blessed to hear different devotees speak to us from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So devotees, if anyone has a question, comment, please indicate that by using the hand emoji, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question. Arichakra Prabhu, please unmute.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah, I can barely hear you.
Your voice is quite distant.
Hello, am I okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Chakra. I see you in Africa now. I usually see you here in the United States when Vilasa Manjari does her thing. Where are you in Africa?
No, he's in Harrisburg.
I'm here in the US. I'm in
Harrisburg. You're in Harrisburg?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
You're in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I said my obeisances, Maharaj.
My
question is, in your presentation, you were saying that for us to be able to either reject or accept the Krishna, that's why we are in the material world. Because and for us to be able to either reject or accept him, that is why we have free will. Because this free will will help us either to reject. Okay. So and you also said that in the spiritual world there's no point of rejection of Krishna. So my question is, does that mean there is no free will in the spiritual world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. No, there's free will also in the spiritual world, but the minute you misuse it, you get an all expense paid ticket to the material world. So it's kind of like, oh, and there's a verse like that by what is it? Krishna Vahirmukha Hanya Bhogavanchakare Nikatastamaya Tare Japati and Dhare. So this verse, I think it's from the Prema Bhavarta, but it's listed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Vahirmukha Hanya Bhogavanchakare Nikatastamaya Tare Japati and Dhare. That when the living entity, Krishna Vahirmukha, when he turns his face away from Krishna, immediately the material energy slaps him down. It's using those words, slaps down, so the living entity, as long as he never misuses his free will, the living entity can stay in the material world. But the minute we want to compete with Krishna, we want to be Krishna, then it's like a bell goes off, ding, you don't want to be here anymore, I guess, right? There's a place for you. It's called the material world. Check it out. And so the next thing we wind up is in the material world. We go, oh, wow, look at this. Now I don't have to serve Krishna. I can do all these amazing things. And then we start getting, Kālī and Durga Devi's various kinds of tortures, with, if you look at Durga Devi, she's got all these weapons. She's got a bow and arrow. She's got a lance. She's got tridents. She's got pitchforks. She's got choppers. She's got all these kind of things. And so once we come here, we try to enjoy, but we just get whacked over and over again. So living entities in the spiritual world also have free will. Generally, they don't misuse it. That's the whole nature of being in the spiritual world. But if they decide to misuse it, then immediately they come here, where they can continue to misuse their free will and do it in a grand scale, in the material world.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Well, Maharaj, there is a memory of Srila Prabhupada shared by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami.
Uh-huh.
I listened to it on YouTube, and I like it so much. He was sharing these memories that Srila Prabhupada was sharing a story about somebody, maybe lots of devotees know about this. Lots of in India, somebody was sitting in the train, and there was a man and a child, and they were standing. They didn't have a place to sit, so the little child was given a chance to sit next to those who were already seated. And to cut everything short, slowly and gradually, they were able to push, and eventually those who were originally sitting on the seat had to give up their seat to this little girl and their parents. Mm-hmm. So Srila Prabhupada was saying this to indicate that as soon as you give Maya a little chance, he will overtake you.
Right.
So Maharaj Parīkṣit, I believe, knew very well that once he gives Maya, Kālī, a little chance, Kālī is going to overtake. No, there is this popular, he says, you give them a yard, you give them an inch, they take a yard.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we wrong to blame Maharaj Parīkṣit for not killing Kālī? Because if Maharaj Parīkṣit had killed Kālī, Kālī wouldn't be here to be bombarding us left and right. Everybody in Kaliyuga is suffering so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. But the problem is that this is the way that the material world is set up. It's not my idea. It's not Parīkṣit's idea. It's Krishna's idea. So there has to be the possibility for doing evil. And as we say, strangely enough, the material world mostly is set up for people to kind of be pious, because in Satya Yuga, mostly people are pious. And in, Treta Yuga, not quite so much, but still a lot of people are pious. And in Dwapara Yuga, I think even still most of the people are pious. But when you get to Kaliyuga, this is the point where, all those people who really, really, really didn't want to have anything to do with God, they get their chance to have their full block party. Now they can bring out the boom boxes and just get down, and there has to be a time like that because people want that. So Krishna allows it to take place. It has bad repercussions, and Krishna knows that it's going to have bad repercussions, but he's not going to stop it. Otherwise, again, he would choke free will. And that's why there are atheists or people who give the wrong philosophy. Krishna could just blot it out, or make them unable to speak, but he allows them to speak, and he allows their speech to bewilder others, So in other words, as I say, Krishna has to sell gas to all countries. So, Krishna is, has to give everybody some chance to do what they want to do, right or wrong. Otherwise, free will would be crushed out, So, of course, in the long run, if you're against Krishna, you're going to get screwed down into a little crumbled pulp, But if you're with Krishna, eventually things will come out. You may go through some difficulties, but everything will come out. So in the long run, evil never prospers. In the long run, evil always fails. But in the short run, it may actually look pretty good, for people doing the wrong thing. So at any rate, Parīkṣit, I think, knew that Kaliyuga was coming in. And the thing is, he gave Kaliyuga a place in his kingdom, but Parīkṣit was so expert that even though he gave Kaliyuga a place, Kaliyuga couldn't flourish and couldn't do anything while Parīkṣit was alive. But once Parīkṣit was gone, when the snake bird bit him and he disappeared, at that point, now Kaliyuga said, now I can do my thing here. So I don't have any Parīkṣits around anymore. And gradually, very quickly, everything goes downhill. And, we get to the place where we are now with governments being more or less just like some kind of gangs or, institutions of hoodlums or something like that. We have people commonly stealing, lying, cheating each other. We have all kinds of terrible things going on. We have wars, we have pollution, we have diseases, we have all these things going on. And that's because Kālī is now able to do whatever he wants. There's no Parīkṣit around.
Well, thank you so much, Maharaj. Shri Govinda Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are you in Africa or are you in the United States too?
Yeah, I'm in Ohio. I'm in Columbus.
You're in Columbus?
Yes, Maharaj.
Oh. We've got your Hadai Prem here in New York, from Columbus.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Yeah, he's a very energetic devotee.
Yeah.
Hey, Maharaj, I have two questions. My first question is about Kālī. Is Kālī an incarnation of a particular somebody? If Kālī, is he an incarnation of a certain personality to come and serve Krishna under this circumstance where living entities want to enjoy separately from Krishna, and somebody has to pave a way for them or kind of arrange for them to enjoy. Just like in the Bible, they said that the Satan was thrown away from heaven to this earth. And now the Satan is harassing everybody, crushing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the similar situation with Kālī. If Satan would have not come, then how would the living entities who want to enjoy separately from Krishna actually enjoy? Mm-hmm. So he has to arrange all kind of arrangement for them to achieve or to fulfill their desires. So the Satan in the Bible and Kālī in Bhāgavatam, is there any difference?
Well, there's a lot of similarity there. I agree. That it mentions in the Kalki Purana that at the end of Kaliyuga, we have Satya Yuga and some demigods teaming up with Kalki to fight Kaliyuga. And finally, at the end of Kaliyuga, Kālī loses and he's forced out. And he has to wait 3 more yugas to come back again, So he's a personality. And he's a personality who helps to influence people in the wrong way. Now, I haven't heard much specifically about Kālī as an entity. In general, usually we hear that it's Maya Devi that bewilders living entities. And of course she does, but Kālī is one of her agents. And Maya Devi is a servant of the Supreme Lord. And she's, embarrassed to do what she has to do, which is to bamboozle the living entities. But that's her duty. That's her task. So she does it until she sees the living entity is serious about devotional service. And then she says, okay, now I'm letting go of this person, But usually that's what she does. She's got a tight hold on everybody. And although she's doing a bad thing, it appears from our point of view, she's serving Krishna in that capacity. And maybe Kālī is doing the same thing, Christianity and religions like that are what we call dualistic, meaning that there is a supreme positive entity and a supreme negative entity. And that started with, Zoroastrianism, where you have this dichotomy between a good and an evil absolute. In the Vedas, we don't have any such idea. In the Vedas, there's just the supreme. And where the dark side comes from is the dark side comes from people who serve the supreme by carrying out the unattractive function of bewildering people. And it's all, done under that. And the reason, of course, that exists, as we were just saying, is so that free will can exist. And if free will can exist, then love has meaning. That's why it can all exist. That's the missing piece that the other religions don't seem to have. And that is that if evil was gone, then everybody would just be good robots, and that's all. And there's nothing particularly important or wonderful about that. So therefore, evil exists. And we don't say that evil is some separately empowered force that fights God, and God is having a lot of trouble overcoming evil. That's the kind of, that came into the world picture through Zoroastrianism. And later it was adopted by Judaism, and later by Christianity, and finally Islam. These religions, came one after another, and they absorbed many of the same principles, although probably they would never admit it, that one religion kind of absorbs some of the principles from the previous religion, because, unless they have some special idea to the contrary, there's no reason to reinvent the entire cosmos. So, one religion just works off piggybacking off the previous religion. But the Vedic tradition was before all these religions. So the Vedic tradition doesn't talk about this dualism in that way, that there is a positive God and a negative Satan or a whatever. But rather, we have, I don't know about Kālī in particular, whether he's a positive person doing something on behalf of Krishna, or whether he's kind of a demon and he's doing things on his own behalf and he's working in that capacity, because there certainly are demons, but they're just selfish people, that's all. And there's plenty of those in the material world, not only ones that have superpowers, but also common ones that don't have superpowers. So that's there. So that's how I'd respond to your question. Is that getting down the topic of what you were thinking about, or did I miss your point?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj. The question is perfectly answered. But my next question is the same similarity. Bible talks about, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heavens.
Yeah.
And so the kingdom come here on this earth means that, and we know in heaven planet, the atmosphere there is completely different from here. The duration of life, everything is completely different from what we experience right here in Kaliyuga. So if that kingdom should come here, and it does come, then this place will look exactly like heaven. And connecting this to Satya Yoga, where people live for 100,000 of years, and practically it's hard to see someone old or dead person, and all kind of harassment and this difficulties that we're going through here right now was not found in Satya Yoga. So and also the demigods were coming to the Earth planet and associate with the humans. And so can we say that in Satya Yoga, that time was like heaven planet, considering the situation at that time? Was it the same like heaven planet?
To some extent, yes. The Satya Yuga is, of course, the best of all times, and that's because people are pious. And because they're pious, they're not greedy for material things. So therefore, people didn't need huge pieces of property. They didn't need to do agriculture. They didn't need a government. They didn't need any of those things, because they were in natural harmony with nature. Now, they might not have been pure devotees, but at the same time, they were certainly not materialistic demons. So as a result, the material world was pretty nice. The material world is never nice, even in the heavenly planets. There's always strife in the material world, because that's the nature of the material world. It's called kunta, whereas the spiritual world is called Vaikunta. So kunta means strife or difficulty, and Vaikunta means no strife or no difficulty. So only in the spiritual world do you have no strife. But to enter the spiritual world, one has to be serious about serving God 24/7. If you're not serious about serving God all the time to the best of your capacity, then you wouldn't be happy there. And this is the place for you, the material world. But we see the material world is not a happy place. So that's why those of us who are devotees have kind of understood that we have to redo our own self-conditioning to reject God. And to undo that, we have to do devotional service. Over the centuries, the Vedic system understood that there is the material world, the earth plane, and the material world, the heavenly planets. And the heavenly planets were for people who acted piously. So We have the material earth plane. We have the heavenly planets. When you act piously, you are promoted, according to the Vedas, to the heavenly worlds. And that's exactly the same concept that we have in Judaism and Islam and in, Christianity, the idea of doing good things, and therefore you will be promoted to heaven. So we call it the heavenly planets, but in modern religion, they call it heaven. But heaven is not the place where one serves God 24/7. Heaven is the place where one enjoys the results of our past pious work. So we see that people in the heavenly worlds, they're beautiful, they're hugely powerful, they're in control of some aspect of the universe, they have a lot of things going for them. The food they have, the clothes they wear are incomparable to what we have here. You know, everything's gold and very fine things in the heavenly worlds. And all this is, you know, what makes the heavenly worlds attractive. But that's why devotees don't want to go there. They don't want to go to heaven. They want to go to the spiritual world where you serve God 24/7. Of course, in the spiritual world, things are also attractive, but there's a big difference. In the spiritual world, people are trying to serve God. Even though they're surrounded by opulence, they're not trying to just enjoy that opulence. What they're trying to do is please the Supreme Lord. That's what they're actually trying to do. So this is what got missed in modern religion. You know, we have this notion of doing good activities, entering heaven. You know, in Judaism, that idea is there. You do good things, you enter heaven. In Christianity, you have that idea. You do good things, you enter heaven. In Islam, you have this idea. You do good things, you enter heaven. Buddhism, no such idea. But in those other three religions, there's that idea. But only in the Vedas do we have the idea that we don't want to play that game. We want to go beyond doing good. We want to go to where we're fully practiced in serving God completely with all of our time. And when we do that, we go beyond heaven to the spiritual world, because we find out in Bhagavad Gita that even if you go to heaven, you have to come back down, because it is as we hear Abrahma Bhuvana Loka, that in this material world, all places from the heavenly worlds to the hellish worlds, all are places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. So as long as you're in heaven, you still have not gotten out of the material world. You have to go beyond heaven. And to go beyond heaven, you have to not be in the mood of how will I do good things so I'll enjoy, but rather you have to be figuring out, how can I come to the position where I'm constantly serving God and I can get out of this material world altogether. Does that make sense? Is that? I've tried to give it a little bit of a
thank you, Maharaj.
Historical perspective and a little bit of also personal perspective of what it means to individuals.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Maharaj.
all right. There is a message from Her Grace Ishopanishad Devi.
No.
So she's saying Hare Krishna Maharaj. Nice
Yeah, I saw that in the chat.
Yes.
Is she in Gita Nagari? Is that where she is, or where?
No, she's in Cleveland.
Oh, in Cleveland. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Actually, I misspoke earlier. Harichakra Prabhu is in Gita Nagari. I am in Harrisburg.
Oh, I see.
Yes. Well, Maharaj, I have one more question, and that is Kalī. I wish I was as strong as Maharaj Parīkṣit to drive Kalī away from my life, but Kalī is living with me in my house here, Maharaj. And not only in my house, every step I take, he takes with me. Now my question is, Maharaj Parīkṣit was just one Kshatriya, just one person. And because of him, Kalī was so much fearful of him that when Maharaj Parīkṣit asked him to leave a particular place and settle at one particular place, he obliged.
Right.
And he could not move much other than the small space given to him by Maharaj Parīkṣit until Maharaj Parīkṣit left the scene.
Right. Right.
So my question is, our temples, we understand it to be like they are embassies to the spiritual world.
Right.
And so we're supposed to have Maharaj Parīkṣit in our temples. But we may have like maybe 10 devotees in a temple, maybe 8 of them may be like Maharaj Parīkṣit. But just 1 or 2 Kālīs have the influence to overpower this Maharaj Parīkṣit. So what do we do, Maharaj?
Yeah. That's a good question. I keep thinking, I've said this quote a bunch of times, that I feel like every religious community is just a collection of ex-sinners. And some of them are a little more ex than others. So that's something we will always have. And I think in terms of chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, where I think it's 12:9, where Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee. He's saying that he's suggesting that if Arjuna wants to be doing the highest thing, that he should always think of him. But then Krishna says, if you can't do that, then follow the regulative principles and develop a desire to attain to me. That's the next step down, and that's 12:10, I think, or something like that. It's the next step down. And then Krishna says, well, if you can't do that, then work for me. And that's the 3rd step down. And, there's 2 or more steps beyond that, but those are not really devotee anymore. We're not talking about people who are in the camp of being devotees, really. But these first 3 steps, one who spontaneously always thinks of Krishna is someone who is actually already a pure devotee, someone who doesn't have to do sadhana to develop a desire for Krishna, someone who already has a desire for Krishna. And there's almost nobody in that category. But most of us are in category 2, where we're engaging in the process of bhakti yoga to develop a desire to serve Krishna. And so that's people who have taken vows to chant 16 rounds. They're doing following 4 regulative principles, all those kind of things. But then there's another sort of larger circle out from there, and that's what we call the working for Krishna circle, where people aren't really following sadhana. They're not really, chanting 16 rounds, but they still like Krishna and they still want to do something to serve or help Krishna. So I think all of our temples are an overlay of these 3 categories. And sometimes we have to recognize that some people are really not in category 2, they're in category 3. And sometimes people might even be initiated, but not really in category 2. Actually, they're in category 3. In other words, they will, at least not in a near term in the future, start chanting 16 rounds. They may not follow all the regulative principles. They may not actually do a lot of devotional activities in the sadhana sense, but they want to work for Krishna. So, okay. And then you have people who are actually, what the Harinam Chintamani calls Dharma Dwajis, or people who are just putting on a show of being a devotee. Now, in one sense, we have it fortunate in the Western world, because since there's nothing special about being devotees to the world in general, you don't get much leverage out of pretending to be a devotee in the Western world. People just think you're another kooky guy, So So not many people put on a big show of being a devotee in the Western world. Whereas in India, it's a different story. You know, you can put on a show of being a devotee and people think you're something, you know, even if you're a liar. But, you know, in the Western world, it's not so much. But at any rate, there are people who become devotees for a materialistic reason. You know, they want to be able to eat every day and not have to, you know, work at a job. So they become a devotee, or they want to be able to, you know, work their way up a hierarchy because they're good at that. And once they get to the top, then they know how to get money in that position. You know, they find some way to grease their own palms by whatever they're managing. They keep a share of it, you know. So you will find those kind of people. And like Parīkṣit, we have to be, you know, aware and able to weigh out what we're really dealing with. Are we dealing with someone who just really is on level 3? They just really want to work for Krishna. They're not ready for level 2. Are we dealing with somebody who is pretending to be a devotee just so that they can eat and sleep nicely? Or are we dealing with somebody who's a real Dharma Dwaji, who is putting on the outfit of a being a devotee, but really is trying to figure out how they can use it to their material advantage to get some money or something out of it, you know? So there are all these kind of things going on. And you have to tolerate, because that's the nature of life, especially in Kaliyuga, that everything is a mixed bag, and you have some good apples and some not so good apples, and you have to, you know, anybody or any organization that's worth anything has to sort that out. Because if you allow people who are, you know, fakers, then the organization gets drugged down. Its name and reputation gets dragged down. If you allow people if you push people who really only want to work for Krishna into level 2, then you alienate them and they can't make the progress that they need to make, you know. And similarly, if you don't find those people who are stealing money or using their position in some nefarious way, then again, the organization becomes damaged by their bad reputation, and they steal funds or they steal some other kind of resource. And so this is what the Kshatriyas of the modern world have to do. And Parīkṣit did that. And we always need a class of people who are able to make those kind of distinctions and make those calls and keep things from going to the dogs, because we treat everybody equally in the sense that we don't make any distinctions between who's doing the right thing and who's doing the wrong thing.
Well, thank you so much, Maharaj. In fact, personally, I did not need or have to tolerate those in the third category, because I am there myself too. So, Hare Krishna. Anyone else with any question, please? Devotees, any question? Salika Prabhu, please unmute.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances and glory to His confounder Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for this beautiful class. And as you were speaking, I was just amazingly remembering the amazing nature of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is so amazing orator that Prabhupada could play with words in such a way that the most complex subject matter becomes so simple to understand. And I've seen that in his disciples and grand disciples, all like this. The way you've explained the concept of the living entities who uses their free will in the spiritual world and using the free will in the material world is so simple when one listening to it. But in a deeper sense, it's actually a very deep subject matter. And that is what is bringing my mind to when we talk about doing devotion, when we talk about using you mentioned how devotees don't do when we've come into the material world, and we try not to misuse the free will to do bhakti. And this bhakti, it sounds so simple. And my question is, of course, in answer to Sadie Prabhu's question, you explained these three levels of devotees. But in general terms, to a layman, what kind of bhakti gives one perfection in this lifetime? Because the Papa said in this very lifetime, we can become a pure devotee and go back to God.
Mhm.
Otherwise, recidivism, whereby we just we become a devotee, but that keeps us repeated a better death, because one might still be a devotee and may not have the opportunity to attend the goal of bhakti. So what kind of bhakti are we talking about? Because when you said it, it looks so simple that, yeah, one can do devotion and then it can go back. But then it's something very deep. So I want to elaborate on that.
Uh-huh. Well, I think the question you're asking is, what do we mean by bhakti, to go back home, back to Godhead? And generally, what we understand, and the way Prabhupada explained it for the most part, is we engage in devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master. And of course, the spiritual master, we know that in one sense, Prabhupada set the standard, and all the initiated gurus nowadays, they ask for the same things, that person chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regular principles, and try to engage in regular sadhana and service. So if you're following those things, you may be making more or less progress, but in the long run, your success is assured. Maybe it's this lifetime, maybe it's 2 lifetimes from now, but it's going to be in the close term. If you're just in the category of working for Krishna, it may be a bunch more lifetimes, because you haven't actually engaged in the process of sadhana. So when a person is not serious about sadhana, then that means that their progress in devotional service is, practically speaking, going to be slow. Not necessarily in all cases, but in general, that's the understanding. That's why we have sadhana. Otherwise, we have religions all over the world, and all over the world, people say, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Hindu, I'm Jew, et cetera, or whatever. But how much of their lives is directly connected to doing any kind of spiritual or religious action? And that is just a very small fraction, so that means that because only a small fraction is actually committed to doing full-on devotion, that's why we have so many religions, and at the same time the world is such a mess, because there isn't sadhana. Now, sadhana is a daily commitment to certain practices that give us purification. Particularly, we learn in the Kālī Santarana Upanishad that the Hare Krishna mantra is very important. And Lord Chaitanya pulled the Hare Krishna mantra out of the Kālī Santarana Upanishad and made it a mainstream focus. And he is called the Yuga Avatar. In other words, he comes to bring the way we can get the most bang for our buck in spiritual life. And that way that we can get the most bang for our buck is by chanting Hare Krishna. And although it seems simple, although it doesn't cost any money, we don't have to go to some special place to do it. We don't have to become linguists. We don't have to learn how to bend and twist our body in some excruciating yoga position. We don't need any of those things. All we need is to give constant attention to the chanting process and listen to it, which is dirt simple. But actually, it's so dirt simple, most people can scarcely believe that it actually is worth anything. That's its problem, because chanting Hare Krishna is so simple, most people can't take it seriously. But if you do take it seriously, you'll see that your whole life will change. And Prabhupada said that if we can just chant Hare Krishna nicely, that's 90% of our devotional accomplishment, because we are trying to focus on Krishna. And we didn't think of the method. Prabhupada didn't think of the method. Lord Chaitanya didn't think of the method. Krishna originally started the method of chanting Hare Krishna. So we're just following what we're being asked to do. And we find that the easiest way to overcome our own bad habits, our own past, Kālī that's living with us, Kālī that we are still very affectionate toward, the best way to overcome the whole bit is by learning how to chant very carefully. And in a short time, we find that instead of this ocean of material strife and this unscalable rock mountain of Kaliyuga impediments and misconceptions, it all just gets reduced down to, as said in the Bhagavatam, the water in the hoofprint of a calf, and you can just step right over it. And but one has to make the effort to chant Hare Krishna very, very sincerely. And it is not an easy effort. Although it's easy to talk about, it's easy to describe. What's not easy is to do it. And it's not that your muscles will get tired because you're not even moving your muscles. What you're doing is trying to push your false ego out of the way and hear the holy name. And the false ego really doesn't like that and will fight, kick, scream, spit, and do a million things to keep you from doing it. But if somehow you can keep on that course, while you're focused, when you're losing focus and you're struggling in that same direction, in a short time, you'll be able to chant much better. And when you chant much better, your whole devotional life will change. And this is the shortcut way. Of course, there's a lot of other ways to get purified, but most of them are much more troublesome. Yeah, you can get purified by getting hit by a bus, as I say. Sometimes you force Krishna to do that type of purification. But if you're serious about chanting, you don't have to go down that road. You can get purified by just simply hearing the holy name. Krishna says, okay, you're taking the primary way of getting purified, so I don't need to use some of my heavier tactics to purify you. I can, just be satisfied that you are making the easiest progress. So that's why, in one sense, it's easy because it's easy to talk about, it's easy to describe, it's easy in an abstract sense to do, but it's not easy to keep your mind constantly focused on the same thing. That's tough as nails, because we want to just space out. And from 1 minute to the next, we're spacing out. And constantly dragging the mind back is a lot of mental work. And that's a good thing, because if we're doing that, then we feel a sense of having accomplished something at the end of our japa. And in fact, we are getting purified by the japa in a way that we may not even realize. So that's, kind of one thing I wanted to put in a plug for, is the process of chanting the holy name, which is something that will help us in the easiest way to make the progress that we really want in the long run.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for that.
Okay, so I think at this point, I guess Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam still got his hand up or something.
Yeah, unmute Shrimad Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, is Assalamu alaikum. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Your Holiness.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, I've been thinking about the different processes given by Krishna in chapter 12.
Yeah.
And your classification. If I heard you clearly, you said that working for Krishna is like the third class, right?
Right.
Sure. But I just want to see if this third class is something that is like the easiest way for everybody. In chapter 18, Krishna recommends to Arjuna that by worship of the Lord, who is the source of all living beings and who is all pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work.
Mm-hmm, right.
And we also see in chapter 2, Krishna tells Arjuna, of course, throughout Bhagavad Gita, but Krishna tells Arjuna to do his duty according to religious principle.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that performing of work according to religious principle seems to be like the common ground or the easiest. I mean, I'm saying it may not be the easiest, but that's what like Krishna recommends for the general masses. And if it is what is recommended for the general masses, that seems to be the easiest way out for many people, because meditating, focusing on Krishna, that's like for Paramahamsas, those who are already free from many disturbances or desires. So that's why I'm asking this question, just to get clarification. It's really chanting of the holy name, which may be the first class. Is that what is actually the easiest for everybody, or is it people doing their duty and in religious principles, and they seem to be making progress towards the perfectional stage? That's what I want clarification on.
Right.
Thanks.
Right. It's a good question, and I think a lot of people get kind of tripped up in the early chapters of the Bhagavad Gita because of issues like this. What we find is that in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is finishing up his list of why he won't fight, and then Krishna begins to gradually go through a whole exposition of Vedic thinking. It's kind of as if Krishna wants to give Arjuna a full picture of what the Vedas are saying. And then once Arjuna and Krishna are looking at the full picture of what the Vedas are saying, then Krishna is going to recommend something. So they're on the same page, and Arjuna won't be misunderstanding what Krishna says. So I think this is a good technique. This is what Krishna is doing. And the first thing that Krishna wants to get across to Arjuna is that to meditate, in other words, to artificially restrict the senses from action, although it could work for very advanced people, it's not going to work for Arjuna. So he's telling Arjuna, here Krishna's mission is, he wants to tell Arjuna that as a Kshatriya, this is his role. And that he, not only is it his role in society, but Krishna wants him to be a Kshatriya in this case and fight the Kurus. So it's not only his role, but it's also Krishna's specific desire. So both of those things are there. And that's why we hear all this emphasis on working, And similarly, for us, most of us are not Kshatriyas. We're not going to go, to a battlefield or something like that. But instead, we will work too, but we will work in a different way. We work in a temple or on the street distributing books or whatever it is. We have some service that we do. But we're not just working. We're developing or following a prescription of sadhana. So sadhana is a group of activities that a person does on a daily basis to keep themselves purified. Whereas people who are just working, they're not performing those activities. They're simply just working for Krishna when they feel like they want to, Sometimes they work for Krishna a lot, sometimes maybe not so much. And sometimes, of course, they're working for themselves. And this is the work for Krishna idea. But that idea that working and sometimes working for Krishna and sometimes not is, although it's in the direction of devotion, it is not yet devotion, really. Devotion is when a person has committed to sadhana. They may be not fully being able to do that sadhana properly, but they've committed to the sadhana. Whereas on the work platform, one hasn't really committed to sadhana. Or if they have at one time, they fell away from that commitment. They're no longer following the commitment that they once made, So that's the difference here, that even devotees have jobs or duties that they have to perform. Those devotees who are in the temple usually have to do something to help maintain the temple and its functions. Whereas if they're living outside, they have to go to work to maintain their griha, and they're, able to live in the world that way. So they also have duties to do. But it's not by doing the duty alone that one makes progress. One makes progress by doing the duty and at the same time embracing sadhana. If you just want to do your duty and you want to give some of that duty or some of the fruits of that duty to Krishna, like say, for instance, you make donations to the temple, or when you're got some free time, you have some skill sets as a carpenter or electrician or a computer programmer or whatever it happens to be, if you have some skills like that, you give them to the temple. That's working for Krishna. But working for Krishna and accepting sadhana is much higher than just working for Krishna and not accepting sadhana. Although a lot more people can find their way to doing the lower thing. It's easier to do, but in general, we should try to point people towards the second circle. But when we realize that, they just aren't going there, then we don't need to beat them to death about it. We can just accept the fact that they're third circle people and let them do their thing. And in the long run, by being around devotees, they may eventually come to the stage where they feel, I'm missing out on just being a worker. I could be in there and learning more than I am now. I could actually be doing more intimate service. I could go on the altar. I do other things. Why am I just content in giving some of my money or, spending the weekend doing the books for the devotees or whatever it is, So, there's a difference between those two categories. And certainly Prabhupada, tried to move us towards the second alternative and not the third one, And you'll see that if you look at Bhagavad Gita, by the time you get to the fourth one, it's not even devotional service in any sense, it's just pious activity. But since it's pious activity, it's better than being grossly sinful, So Krishna is giving us these gradual levels just so that we can understand in the center, it's like a bullseye. That's being a pure devotee where you're automatically attracted to Krishna. And then one ring out from the center bullseye is the idea of doing sadhana or committing to being a devotee by taking initiation and following regular principles and sadhana on a regular basis. That's the second circle out. Third circle out is the circle where we are working for Krishna. And although many more people can find themselves in that circle, you make much slower progress until you go to the second circle. So it's kind of like a pyramid. And that's why Prabhupada wasn't just content with people coming to the temple and giving a donation, some places that's all they really care about, as if, people coming and giving regular donations and they can pay the bills or the mortgage or whatever it is, and that's fine. But Prabhupada didn't want it to just end there. He wanted to go beyond that to the point where people understand the philosophy. They make a deeper commitment. They follow regular principles. They become initiated.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for such an elaborate answer to that wonderful question of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
I want to continue.
Please continue. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj, for that explanation. So I am trying to, there are two things I'm looking here. One is the fact that is our Krishna consciousness, our prescription or our goal, is it just individual liberation or corporate? When we think of like influencing masses and helping majority of the society, the people in the society to progress towards God, then the first and the second may not actually be very much what is needed. The third becomes like, what Sarva Dharma, that is like Krishna recommending karma yoga instead of karma sannyas as the model to bring the society in general to God consciousness. But if our goal is for individual salvation or liberation and not mass, and of course, the first and the second category is like what is required. So that's what I want to know. Because sometimes when our preaching is to the devotees in the temple, then the first and second becomes like, maybe what we should focus on. But if we really are thinking of mass, salvation, corporate salvation, then that the work aspect becomes, like what is needed. That I think that is clear enough. But then there's another aspect. Srila Prabhupada used to say, or Srila Prabhupada was quoted as saying that 50% of his mission was not accomplished because he could not oversee the establishment of an ashram. And just trying to look outside ISKCON or outside, outside ISKCON, to see in other religious societies, is there any form of an ashram existing? And just any form of it. I'm not talking about an ashram perfectly, but any iota of it existing elsewhere. And then we find that this concept of working for God and doing, I'm combining it with sadhana, it seems to be existing in Islam. For those who are serious, I'm not talking about general, but the real practitioners of Islam. So we see that, they try to do their work according to religious principles in some ways, according to their own religious principles anyway, because there may be higher religious principles they are not following. But according to their religious principle, they're combining sadhana with work. You find a Muslim, respecting his 5 times prayer, maybe even if it's in the airport, maybe he's working in the office as a general manager, maybe it's a sweeper on the street. When it is time for his prayer, it kind of respect the hour of prayer, which is like combining sadhana with work. At least that kind of system helps them to be able to pause and think about God, meditate on God. So work and sadhana seems to be combined in that kind of religious practice. So I'm trying to see this as an example of what the Varnashram system is trying to introduce also in Krishna consciousness, to make people to be able to remember God even while they're engaged in their work throughout the day. Those are the points I want you to kindly give us more clarification.
No, I agree completely. I think that what you've said is exactly right, that Prabhupada did say that 50% of his mission had not been fulfilled because he hadn't established Varnashram Dharma. Now, people variously interpret that in various different ways. I take that to mean like what you were talking about, that ISKCON will eventually make a platform where many people can sort of grab on, in some kind of way, doing some kind of work for Krishna. And in the beginning, they may not be doing any kind of sadhana or any kind of thing like that. But because of their proximity to devotees and their brushing up against devotees who are doing sadhana, it may rub off on them. And then again, there will be some people who it doesn't rub off on, but it doesn't matter. At least they helped the progress of Krishna consciousness, even if they didn't really fully embrace it yet, but in some future life they will. And I'm sure this does happen also in other religions. I don't think that ISKCON or, Krishna consciousness has a monopoly on it. But again, both things should be there, that there is a sadhana, and then there is also some kind of work. In general, there are very few people at the elevated stage where they don't need to do any kind of work. They can just do sadhana. And, this is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita too, that one who, pretends to be above the modes of nature, and yet his mind contemplates objects of the senses, he is called a pretender. And that is a premature stage of imagining that you're more advanced than you are. And again, in a purport in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that the person who has no duties to perform is the person who is fully Krishna conscious. Such a person has no duties. Why is that? Well, the answer is because these duties, these sadhana principles, are what purify us. If you're already purified, you don't need to perform them. But there are almost no people we see in the world in that category. So that's the sort of issue there. We're talking about a category of people that are almost non-existent, So therefore, the rest of us have to do some work. And at the same time, we have to perform sadhana. So if we do both things, we'll make the sure progress. And eventually, maybe we'll come to the point where we have the structure to be able not only to make a nice temple or a nice community with devotees doing devotional service, but it can be a bigger circle around that of people who are maybe not yet devotees, and some of them maybe will never in this lifetime become devotees, but at the same time, they are serving Krishna, associating with Krishna's devotees, and helping with the mission, even though they haven't fully embraced the mission themselves. So if this is happening in other religions, great. So that's how I would respond to your question. I agree with what you're saying.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Okay.
So beautiful. Maharaj, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time today. And hopefully we'll have you again, like maybe once in a month, if you shower your blessings upon us.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me know. And I'm here in New York City, so you know where to find me.
Yes.
All right. So I appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to speak to this group, and all glories to your service. We hope that all of you are doing well, and we look forward to seeing all these devotees again sometime soon.
Hare Krishna.